Hi, everybody. You are in the right place. This is the amazing season closer for the Parentis Literary Salons. And I am MM DeVoe, and I am one of your hosts, the founder of Parentis. Thank you for saying haha, whoever it was who did that. I love you. Mwah. And this is Christina Chu, our awesome curator and my co-host. And what we are doing right now is getting everything set up so that we can see your comments, but nobody's saying anything yet. I know some people have got to be watching by now. Drop your hellos. Like, this is the time. This is when you say, hi, I'm in the audience, so that we know that you're there. You say, hi, I'm blah, blah, blah from blah, blah, blah. And then we say hi to you, because we're kind of waiting for a couple more people to come. We have the best show ever. You have no idea. Okay, so while we're here, while we're gathering, and while you guys are putting your hellos in the comments, I want to let you know about Parentis. So hi Helene, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. Our mission is to keep parents on creative track, to keep writers on creative track after they have kids. That's it. We just do everything we can to keep you writing, to keep you functional, to keep you going. One of the wonderful things that we do is we have these salons, and these salons are intended to inspire you in your journey of creation, right? We have, I want to give some thank yous really quick up at the top. Thanks to Lynn and Abiola and Bongmei and David. And Bongmei is on our advisory board, and we haven't seen her in a while, so we are so glad that she's out in the audience. And David, you're a regular. We love you. And also, I want to say hello to the IWWG participants who are out there. The International Women's Writing Guild decided that they were going to come, and we're happy to have them. So if you're from there, please drop a note in the comments so that we know that you're there. Also, in the front row today, we're going to wave at some people. But we'll tell you about that later, because we're going to keep some secrets. Christina, how are you today?
Wonderful, wonderful. And this is such a special salon. I can't even believe it's the season closer already. And we have 3 amazing authors, so accomplished. I'm so inspired by these people. I can't wait for everyone to hear them read and hear them speak. You're going to love, love, love this event tonight.
It is really, really good. Hi, Juliana. Hi, Jamie. It's fun when people text in their things. The other thing is that when you write, when you click the little hearts and the little happy faces, we can see them. So anything that you write into the comments, we can see you. We want you to interact with this, with us while we're presenting. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you really like the readers, what they're reading, then we want you to react and respond. What we should do is introduce our readers. We should introduce them. We're so excited. We're all fanning out over here. Like, we can't even tell you we're so excited.
So our 3 authors tonight, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Our first reader tonight will be Sadeqa Johnson. She's the internationally best-selling author of 4 novels, including the most spectacular Yellow Wife. You have to read it if you haven't read it. And one of them, she's just so accomplished and
to win the National Book Award,
beautiful and everything. Yes,
I'll get win the National Book Award.
Our second reader is Myung Ok Lee. She's the author of Finding My Voice, Somebody's Daughter, and oh my gosh, the soon-to-be next novel, The Evening Hero, which
so critically acclaimed.
It's it's getting so much buzz. It's such a great book, and you are gonna love it.
And her husband's a writer, and they do this, and they're both great. It's all good.
Yes. So we will drop the links as they read. Our final reader tonight is Jacquelyn Mitchard. She's the New York Times best-selling author of 22 novels,
and 23, working on 24. She was already telling us.
And she is a little bit like she defies gravity a little bit. I mean,
she's also got nice.
Yeah. And she has 9 kids and
Nine.
novels. So you can do it. You can, wherever you are, you can do it. Okay.
Okay. Oh, okay. So first of all, in the front row tonight, we have 2 people in the front row tonight that we want to just wave at. So first of all, Sydney McInnes, who is a lovely Canadian who has 4 kids and is working on a memoir. And I see you out there, Sydney. Thank you for coming. We miss you at the meetups. You're amazing. And Clydette DeGroat. I wish that you guys could meet each other. If you were actually sitting in a literal front row, you would totally be chatting with each other and having a lot to talk about. Clydette is, of course, the one of the founders of the DeGroat Foundation, who is our sponsor tonight. So thank you to the DeGroat Foundation. More about them later. They have something very special for you. You have to keep listening to find out what it is. Okay, let's bring on some people. Let's bring our people up.
Our first reader, Sadeqa Johnson, is the internationally best-selling author of 4 novels, including Yellow Wife, and Then There Was Me. Her accolades include being the recipient of the National Book Award, which Milda gave away already, the award, and the USA Best Book Award for Best Fiction. She is a Kimbillo Fellow, a former board member of the James River Writers, and a tall poppy writer. Originally from Philadelphia, she currently lives near Richmond, Virginia, with her husband and 3 children. Everyone, please welcome Sadeqa.
Hi. Hello. It's so wonderful to be here. My goodness, your energy has me like bouncing in my seat. I'm having a hard time.
Your resumes have us bouncing in the seat.
This is wonderful. And I think Helene said in the chat, 9 kids and 22 novels. I'm a slacker. I was like, you took the words right out of my mouth. So as she mentioned, I'm the author of Yellow Wife, and I'm just going to open up the book and start from the beginning. And I'm going to pretend like I don't need reading glasses because I'm sort of shy wearing them in public. So please bear with me. Chapter 1, The Bell Plantation. Mama believed that the full moon was the most fertile night of the month, and that everything she touched held God's power. Each full moon, she dragged me out in the middle of the night with her to hunt for roots, plants, seedlings, and rare blossoms to use for healing. I did not understand why God's power could not be found during daylight hours, and as I trudged behind her, the March cold overwhelmed me. Even my thick wool shawl was no match against the country freeze. Fear of the woods made my feet clumsy, and I tripped over fallen sticks, scratched my shin on the spiky brush, and bumped my head on low hanging branches. Mama, on the other hand, moved with skill and confidence, like the earth parted a path and presented the way for her. Even in the dark, she knew where to stop for herbs and how to avoid the dangerous ones. We had only a small lantern to guide us, and when I asked how she knew where things grew, she responded, "My gut be my light." We slipped through the thicket, past the drafty cabins where the field hands slept on pallets stuffed with hay and husk. I heard dry coughs and a low whine from a hungry baby. Farther down toward the James River, we traveled through the clearing where we met on Sundays for church. Then over the hill, along the side of the cemetery, peppered with sticks to honor our dead. As we traveled deeper into the woods of the plantation, the thick forest blocked the light of the moon. I could hear the growls and grunts of unseen animals and fretted over running into hungry raccoons or red foxes or stepping on a poisonous snake. I tried to clear the worry from my mind as the land flattened out, but then something pricked my ankle. Before I could call out, Mama stopped suddenly and reached for my hand. "This here's a black walnut tree. Grow deep in the woods, so you gotta know where to look. Cure for most everything. Ever unsure, come seek this tree." Mama handed me the lantern, then pulled a blade from her satchel and severed a piece of bark. She brought it to her nose, then ran her tongue along the inside of it. Her stain anything it touched. After we make a tea for Rachel, rest we use to dye those sheets for the nursery. Just hoping we ain't too late to save that girl. Mama reached into her bag and pulled out a red ribbon. Gone and mark it, so it'll be easy to find when you come without me. I reached up and tied the ribbon on a skinny twig, knowing I had no intentions of roaming these woods without my mama. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Just
Yeah.
the whole book is just written like that. It's just it's like musical, it's just beautiful.
Lilting,
you.
the Southern. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have Southern in you?
So I'm from Philadelphia, but I guess, people who live in Philadelphia, most of us have had roots of people who've come up from Virginia and South Carolina and North Carolina. So I think it's just a mishmash, of accents. They just play in my head.
Nice.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So our next reader is someone who I have known for 30 years. And I feel like actually I'm tearing up a little bit because he is such an amazing person. And if you want an example of someone who sticks to something and never gives up, she's the person. And I'm so proud of her because her book is forthcoming. It's coming out on the 24th. And you are going to love her book too. I mean, it's just crazy. We will talk more about how long it took her to write it and everything else. But I'm just going to introduce her so she can read from it. Myung Ok Lee is the author of Finding My Voice, Somebody's Daughter, and The Evening Hero. It's about on the future of medicine, immigration, and North Korea. And it's launching. Is that next week? It's next week, right? Or the week after?
Oh, please, God. It's got to be 2 weeks, right?
She was the first Fulbright scholar to Korea in creative writing and has received many honors for her work, including an O. Henry Honorable Mention, the Best Book Award from the Friends of American Writers, and a Rhode Island State Council on the Arts Fiction Fellowship, and is a current New York Foundation for the Arts Fiction Fellow. Her essays are often about her severely autistic son and appear in The Atlantic, The New York Times, Slate, Salon, Guernica, The Guardian, and others. Everyone, please welcome Myung Ok Lee.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Christina and Milda and everyone at Parentis. The work you do is so important. And it's like I was telling everyone, this is the one place where I'm not super nervous about my son bursting in. I just feel so comfortable and I'm so happy to be here. Happy to be reading from this book that has taken me 18 years to write. And so I'm just going to read a little section that's kind of at the beginning. You don't really need to know much. The protagonist's name is Young-man. He's visiting his son's new house. His son's name is Einstein. It was a very American thing, the house tour. If you were rich enough, your Korean house would have an anbang, a receiving room, and the rest would be hidden. Here, Marnie, Einstein's wife, took them through every nook and cranny, even to the bedroom, proudly showing off her walk-in closet, her lingerie hanging on padded hangers. Young-man had to pretend he was interested instead in the dozen wedding pictures clustered on the bureau. Marnie and Einstein, Einstein and Marnie and Einstein getting engaged on the beach, hips touching frontally. He averted his eyes. Marnie getting ready with her butterfly-colored attendants. Marnie looking demure. Marnie throwing her bouquet. Marnie leaning against a tree. Marnie and Einstein with their band. Marnie and Einstein in full matrimonial regalia in front of the Harvard Club in New York. They had had 2 photographers and a professional videographer. Less than 50 people in attendance. Young-man suspected the wedding would have been much larger, except neither of them had many close friends. Marty's cleaning lady had been her maid of honor. If she had siblings, Young-man had never met them. Her parents had also not shown up. If she had aunts and uncles, they didn't show up either. She had few friends from various jobs, stewardess, bank teller, and Einstein's roommates from Harvard had been there also, as it had taken place at the Harvard Club in New York. He thought of his own wedding, held between shifts at the hospital in Birmingham. Myung Ok, wearing a stiff yellow dress, snug at the abdomen, that had been handed down from the Thai intern's wife and would be passed on to the next woman who needed it. It happened in the living room of some professor whose name now escaped him. Tea and small cakes had been served. The sole documentation was from Mohan, his best intern friend, who had taken a picture of them reciting their vows. The camera, as cameras did at the time, had a bare bulb as a flash. They both looked shocked and spectral, like ghosts, so they never displayed the photo. It was hard to imagine the reckless abandon they'd once shared. They were so stiffly formal with each other. Mohan had asked Jungmann if their marriage had been arranged. In Einstein's cluster of wedding photos, there was only a single one of Myung Ok and him. At the end of the ceremony, the guests marched out via a narrow aisle between two banks of folding chairs. The taxidermied animal heads on the walls had been observing all the guests as they marched. The photographer was stationed at the end to take a picture of each participant as they passed. Myung Ok and he were the first to march out after the bride and groom. With everybody's eyes on them, Jungmann found himself unexpectedly overcome with sentiment. He'd reached for Myung Ok's hand, and she rejected him at the moment he most wanted to hold a piece of her, any piece. He ended up grasping her wrist. It looked like he was grabbing a runaway toddler. He was smiling. She was not. Her gaze was aimed toward the lower corner of the picture, expressionless, reminiscent of those pictures of Patty Hearst in court. Thank you.
Yay! Thank you, Marie. That was great.
Oh, it's good to hear you read again.
I'm so
Marie's
happy to
read
hear
for
it.
us before. We love her.
Thanks.
I'm so proud of Marie. I just feel like I'm like the pride is just coming off of me. I just love her so much, and I'm so proud. Thank you, Marie, for reading.
Thank you.
Our final reader is Jacquelyn Mitchard. I am in awe of this person, and you will be too when you hear this bio. It's actually a condensed version. The real bio is like a mile long. Jacquelyn Mitchard is the New York Times best-selling author of 22 novels and the recipient of Great Britain's Talk About Prize, the Bram Stoker and Shirley Jackson Awards, and named to the shortlist for the Women's Prize for Fiction. First novel, The Deep End of the Ocean, was the inaugural selection of the Oprah Winfrey Book Club.
First one.
The first one.
First ever. And I think Oprah's book club was like the first ever commercial book club. So it's like the first ever of the first ever.
And there are 3 million copies of it in print and 34 languages. It was later adapted into a major feature film starring Michelle Pfeiffer. Her novel, Still Summer, has also been adapted for a film still in production. She has an essay collection, The Rest of Us, Dispatches from the Mothership, which is drawn from her newspaper column, syndicated by Tribune Media. She's an avid Italian cook, and she lives on Cape Cod with her husband and 9 children.
9.
Her newest novel, The Good Son, a story about 2 women, one whose son was convicted of murdering the other's daughter, is out from Mira HarperCollins. Everyone, please welcome Jacquelyn Mitchard.
Thank you so much. I'm going to read very briefly from a book that is not finished yet.
Yes,
that I'm writing right now, today. It's called Saltwater, and it is about a young woman who is an underwater photographer, and she comes home to Cape Cod for the first time in years, and to see her widowed father and her very best friend, who has been her friend all her life, only to find out that they have gotten married to each other. And the dad is 60 and the best friend is 27. And she has recently gotten married, and this is an argument that she's having with her husband, her new husband, whom she loves very much, who's Canadian. So her name is Frankie, his name is Gilles. People who have interdependent lives have to make compromises, Gilles went on. So preachy that for the first time in their short life together, she wanted to slap him. He said, it doesn't look that way from the outside, but they're probably putting up with all kinds of small and large sins. St. Gilles, Frankie thought. It's easy when everyone in your family takes the usual course and also reveres you and each other. Gilles and his brother were like the March sisters in Little Women, except for there being only 3 instead of 4. How come you're so smart all of a sudden, she said. What about this family devotion? You were the one who said family ties were death to adventure. Well, I was wrong. I think I was showing off. I thought loneliness was romantic, but that was just how I dressed it up. This is a different kind of adventure. That night at home, Frankie began to write again. Why was she writing? What was she writing about? Was it even any good or worth her time? She wrote about how being a photographer meant always being a corollary rather than a participant. And then in some ways, being her naturalist father's daughter was the same thing. Addie's birth was the first time that she felt at the very center of her own life, as though something was happening that would not happen if she if she were truly and not fully present. It was a strange and powerful emotion, singular despite its ubiquity. I wasn't intending on having the Christmas baby. People whose births collide with even minor holidays endure jokes for the rest of their lives. April Fool's Day, the joke was on your parents. July 4th, you're a real firecracker. I would only imagine how it would be being born on Christmas Eve. I didn't mean to set him up. Of course, first babies come late, so I thought he would be born in January. When he was young, Gil and his brothers used to set up the creche in the French way, so that every day the wooden figures of the wise men moved closer, finally arriving on the Feast of the Epiphany, when the wise guys finally got there and explained what the big deal was. Who believed them? Who know what they believed? They weren't kings, but stargazers, maybe even astrologers, advisors to Herod the king. They were informers. They certainly weren't Jewish. They weren't waiting for a Messiah. They probably rode swift Arabian horses, not camels. They watched the North Star, as I have so many times out in the dark on the water when I've lost my bearings. Our son was not born in a stable, but during a snowstorm in a little cottage by the ocean. If I was impressed before by the circumstances in which women do this, women I've met when I've traveled, I'm in awe now. I didn't think I was going to die, but at a certain point, that would have been fine with me. Women are serious. Women are undaunted. She thought of her first published photo in Smithsonian Magazine. It really wasn't her first photo, but her first one for real money. And she had to visually convey the implicit symbolism of a mother cormorant feeding her chick from her own throat. Although back then she hadn't really understood the full power of that symbolism. It had been, she recalled, part of a feature called Small World, photographs of every matter of animal child. Did she understand more now? Did taking her place on this great wheel of women who were mothers vouchsafe her not only the personal power of growing and nurturing an entire perfect being from her own body, but also give her added artistic chops? Would she be a better artist with better insights, even as her time and her capacity to express those insights was constricted exponentially by the very event that conferred the presumed wisdom? Or was this whole line of reasoning just a bunch of baloney? Was it a chicken and egg proposition? Did an artistic disposition predispose you to a tenderer sensibility? Of course not. The human world, and even to a lesser extent, the animal world, was filled with lousy, blunt, selfish, immature parents. The human world and the animal world also teemed with terrific parents who saw that the truest expression of their role was doing the thing itself, not making some kind of representation of it.
Thank you. That was lovely. So what number book is that?
This is 24.
24.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
They're good. They're, there's just a lot of them, like my children. I mean, they're not all standouts. They're sort of like the children of a mouse. They're very fast moving.
I hope you're talking about your books and not your children.
Oh my goodness. So this is incredible. So how do you write with non-kids?
Well, first of all of them are not at home. Some of them are grown up. One of them even has children of his own. They range in age from the youngest is 16 and the oldest is 34.
Oh.
And 3 of them are grown up and live on their own, and some are in college. And though they live here and come in and out in big families, if the family's even remotely functional, they look out for each other a great deal. I've told you that before, Christina. It's not like when I was growing up on the west side of Chicago and there was the cop down the street, and the firefighter, and they had 13 kids because they were Catholic, and the mother was just gone. I mean, she was just out in the yard, standing there staring across the street. So if it's a we had these kids on purpose, through birth and adoption. And so we knew what we were in for, I guess.
Wow. It's just amazing. I'm just amazed by you.
So while we are getting rearranged, because we're going to get rearranged so we can all talk at the same time, I just want to really quick do a sponsor shout out to the DeGroat Foundation and let you all know out there in viewer land that there are not one, but a minimum of 7 grants that are being offered right now for the Courage to Write grant. So if you are a writer and you are over 18, you are eligible for one of these 7 or more $7,000 grants. So the deadline is May 31st. Go get one and then tell us, because we'll be very excited for you. That is the word from the sponsor today. But really, we are very, very grateful. We love our sponsors, especially this one. This is a really good one.
Do you need to be a parent to apply for that one?
You do not. You
So
may just be over 18.
So my student, exactly. I'll tell my students.
Over 18. Anybody who is over 18.
Nice.
And the application is not daunting. It is a 1-page, not 1 page, but it's like a 1-section letter. And they tell you exactly what to write. They say, write this in the first paragraph, this in the second paragraph. It's all very straightforward. It's about you, why you write, what you're writing. It's very simple. It's lovely and accessible. And I highly recommend that you try it. Try it. The worst thing that'll happen is you'll learn how to write a grant application.
Exactly.
So, that's a thing. I really also wanted to say there was one comment that I missed. It was a question from Juliana, and it is looks like it's for when you're, it's for Sadeqa. When you are writing, do you do it in the accent?
That's such a good question. I do hear my characters speaking in sort of an accent or a voice. And so I try my best to get it down. And sometimes I don't always get it right. And so that's when I go back into the editing and I could see that I'm getting it wrong. And I try and get it down to the best of my ability. But I do hear it sort of in an accent. Maybe not the one that I did for the reading, but definitely an accent.
Do you guys all read your work out loud? Like when you're writing it, or do you just write it? Jacquelyn doesn't have time to read out loud. She's like sending pages as she's writing them. Go.
I do not read. I don't ever. Well, I read it out loud at a reading, but I don't read it out loud to myself. No.
Well,
I read it out loud.
Yeah.
Good for
So do
you.
I.
Every good writer I know does. I'm
it.
writing an essay right now about how many wrong things I do that all good writers don't do, like start at the beginning and I won't go forward until I've completed the first sentence and it's perfect. And I'll never write anything else in the story until, I write it all in progress, and it's ridiculous.
Well,
So
I
do everything.
I will back you on your ridiculousness, because I think that everybody should be able to write the way that works for them. So many writing students or just writers are constantly like, instead of asking, how do you do this, so that they can come home and be like, I'll try it. Oh, that sucks for me. They go, oh, I have to do it this way. And then they get so frustrated because somebody gets up at 4 a.m. to do their writing and they can't. And then they feel like they're going to fail as a writer. I'm like, come on, there's like all these other hours you might wake up or do it right before bed. Like, I don't know.
In fact, Marie gets up at like 4 a.m.
Do you, Marie? When is your writing time?
But first part of it is I used to have a very cognitively stressful job. I used to be an investment banker. So the only way I could get like uninterrupted time was to get up at 4:30 in the morning and work before I went to work. And then it's really helped though, because since my son has so many issues, he often didn't sleep. And so again, getting up at 4:30 was sometimes a pretty good bet that I could get quiet time.
You have like a little quiet house for that moment.
Yeah. But I think like during the pandemic, I was realizing getting like an actual almost professional espresso machine was the best gift to myself ever.
I did the same thing. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I think it's changed my whole life.
Right?
I mean, it's the size of the Apollo 11 sitting out there on the counter.
Yeah, several dials too.
Oh,
like,
dials, parts, and my kids make fun of me for. They say you don't even know how to use it. You don't know how to fly that thing.
So let's check, Sadeqa, Jacquelyn. What is your writing time like? What is like your writing schedule? Like, do you schedule yourself, or do you just write because you're on a deadline and you're just like going? How do you each do this?
Well, right now, the only kid who I'm really responsible for is the middle schooler. The other two sort of do their own thing, which is great. So I need to get up at 6 so that I can make sure she's up and moving. Mm-hmm. And so I normally spend that hour between 6 and 7 between praying and meditating and getting centered and getting her out the door. And I normally show up about 6:45 or 7 o'clock. And I tend to write into about the time she gets home, which is about 2:30. Nice. So not straight, sometimes I, have to go make breakfast and that sort of thing, but that's sort of my carved out time for writing.
Cool. And so it's an everyday, like 5 days a week. This is the time. It's like a job.
It's like a job. And, Fridays have been the day where I have to sort of knock off a little bit early because, as you all know,
and the whole publishing industry.
The business of being an author takes up some time, and I never really get to that when I spend all my time writing. So by Friday, it's like, okay, when's the last time I did something on social media? Why do I have 65 emails in my email box? Let me start clearing this out and answering people's questions and that sort of thing. So Fridays, I knock off a little bit early just so that I can work on the business of being an author.
And Marie, you don't still wake up at 4:30 in the morning?
Well, I should also add, so my new day job is still also very cognitively taxing because I teach creative writing. And generally the semesters where I'm teaching, I don't get a lot of writing done because it's too difficult with all the students writing coming in. So I don't get up as early because I'm not working. But then when summer starts, and then I often don't teach in the fall, that's when I do pretty consistently. That's what I do on Instagram because I'll like take a picture of the clock. And so just sort of my little motivation, I don't know, because you do it every day and then it'll hopefully add up to something.
Yeah. Well, and it has. Look at you. Maybe it took 18 years, but here it is, and it's awesome. That is a good thing, really. And Jacquelyn, for you, so I'm curious, when your kids were small and you had so many of them, what was your writing life like then, as opposed to now that everybody's kind of grown and flown-ish?
Yeah. Well, they aren't grown and flown, but they're grown. I mean, I don't need to make food for them in the morning and stuff like that because they're in high school and they don't want to eat anyway. And they just say, can we have money to go to Starbucks? And So so when they were little, it was an entirely different thing. When I wrote my first novel, this was really challenging. I was in my late 30s. I was a widow. I was widowed young, and I had 3 little boys under the age of 9. And that was when I wrote my first novel. And I did it mainly after they were asleep at night. And that's when I started sitting in my bed to write. So I would be on the same floor as they were, in case they needed me, or in case I needed to get them to quiet down or something like that and go to sleep, because they were struggling enormously too after their dad died. And so that's when I realized that it was a pretty good deal to write on a laptop, on a lap desk in my bed, because when I completely was out of energy, I could just fall over. And I'm still doing that. I tend to write only 3 hours a day, because after 3 hours a day, I start getting sloppy and making mistakes, and hope that I will write 10 pages going forward every day, and then going back and editing that the next day and going forward from there. And a whole lot of other things have to be, but those of you who have young kids still, or who have kids that with primary needs, that they come first. And they come first no matter what. So that my writing is about the 12th most important thing that I do, but it's very, very important to me.
Yeah, I like the way that you put that, because just because something comes first doesn't mean that the second thing isn't important. Like it's just second. It's the next thing that you do when you get your time. Our little tagline is parenting done, right? Because it's like the next thing right after, So there's another question about craft here from Helene. Here, that reminds me, she says, how and when do you edit your books? As you write, after draft 1, or when it feels absolutely necessary? Because it already sounds like, Jacquelyn, you do 10 pages and then you go back and edit those 10 pages and move on to the next 10. Is that the way you've done for all 22 of your books?
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
Then of course, when I know that this book is perfect, absolutely perfect, I give it to my agent, and he says, I don't even know why you even have that character in there and why he's a priest, because he's completely unnecessary. Take out chapter 23. And then I do that. And then when the publisher gets it, she says, I always thought that guy would be a priest. And why does it go so abruptly from chapter 22 to 25? I don't understand. So
That's so funny. Marie, how do you edit?
Like Jackie, I have done the same thing forever, probably. I actually have like my old typewriter behind me, and I write by hand, and then I type it in later. So the typing becomes another editing layer, but I try not to look back, and I try to just keep going. And then once I have a draft, a lot of times I'll just look to kind of see if I can have patterns. It's kind of like looking at entrails or something. A lot of times I'll just start over. You can see why I've written one book in 18 years.
A really good book.
Yes. This book is like 3 books stapled together now, basically. But I do the same. It's just, I don't know why. Like those things back there, those are all notebooks. I write, then I type it in. Like not on the typewriter anymore. But then when I write nonfiction, it's totally different. I just type it out. It feels so good. I'm like, oh, it's so fast.
Nice.
How did you know that this finally was it was done? How did you know that, Marie? Because you've been mulling over this for all these years.
I've been lost in my own book for probably like 10 years. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And it was 850 pages when my agent sold it. So I tried to make it a little smaller, but you know how when you move one thing, like everything just falls apart. And then I think part of it too was that, and then a lot of it had to do with, it was a big social novel, about medicine and late stage capitalism. But then with the election, and with all the anti-Asian violence, like satire just goes out the window, because satire depends on excess.
Right.
And so that's also when it was first more Einstein's story. Like he's this bro, this tech firm doing medicine. But then Jungmann was more the filler that I was writing. And then slowly it became more important, even though, I don't know, just sort of an ego perspective. I wanted to write this big social novel like Jonathan Franzen, like wanted to have this sort of masculinist. Like, why would I want, well, Christina, you know, like we co-founded the Asian American Writers Workshop because it was kind of founded, you know, because we were always like under this like weird Amy Tan, like hegemony, like, why do you write like Amy Tan? Or why don't you write like Amy Tan? Do you see what I'm saying? So I didn't want to do this immigrant thing. Like that was the last thing I want to do. But the you know what I mean? Like the form takes over. Like it's almost like the work wants to be what it wants to be. So finally it's like, okay, like the book wants to explain that Asians are actually humans and we should try not to murder them. Do you know what I mean? Like that sounds a
It's a good theme.
But that just kind of became like almost a motivator. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it just makes me feel like, oh, wow, the way I see myself as a complete human being who should be murdered is not the way other people see me.
Holy
So to some degree, the character is like this person who just looks like this little Asian man, but then he has this whole backstory that I hope like through the kind of like fractured narrative becomes like a whole where you kind of care about him. At least I hope that's the intention.
Yeah,
What
for
was
sure.
that last moment like when you're like, it's done?
I think there's like some editorial differences as well in terms of, because one thing I can say, again, you know, with ethnic writing, and I do want to mention too, I am an adjunct in creative writing, but I'm also core faculty at the Center for the Study of Race and Ethnicity, which is actually where I feel like is more my intellectual home, because that's where like I'm full-time faculty. And so I'm thinking about these issues all the time. And part of it is like with ethnic writing, it falls into its own trope. So it's like, oh, well then all Asians look alike. So all Asian literature looks alike. So a lot of this was, why can't you write this more like Pachinko? Like it's this big epic. And I'm like, no, he's an immigrant. So it cuts back and forth and the perspectives change. And at one point, like I broke all these rules. Like there's like one little thing where it's just the wife, but you never hear her perspective again. And I was like, you can't do that. You can't have a flashback within a flashback and stuff. But, you know, actually some reviewer just said that's what she liked about it. So I was so glad I was able to, do you know what I'm saying? Like we get so stuck, and I understand like publishing is a consumer industry. Like they have to try to sell stuff and they get nervous about, is it readable? Like it not being readable, it's like a problem where I felt like I read it fine. You got it. And I'm just like, but I read it fine. And so why should that, or this fractured narrative? And I was just so stuck on that. So I was really lucky. I had a really good agent. Like she didn't go in and say, no, Marie's right. She was just kind of stand back and like, is this what you want? Like, if that's the way you want to do it, I'll be.
Marie, how many years into your 18-year journey did you get the agent?
Well, what happened is, so this is my third agent. So when I finally got it done after 10 years of writing it, my beloved agent said, it is too long, 850 pages. Despite the fact I said Middlemarch is 850 pages, and that's what inspired this book.
Middlesex is also about 850 pages.
Exactly. Like I've got real David Foster Wallace vibe here, you know? So, no, she said, I can't sell it at this length. You'll have to make it at least half. So we just kind of had a parting of the ways. She helped me find my new agent. And so
she helped you find your new agent.
Well, you know, it was very sweet.
That's interesting.
We could have a really good relationship. She just said it's harder, you know, because everything is so like, on reputation. So she didn't want me to be unagented.
That's so nice.
She just said, you should just kind of put it out like, oh, you're thinking of leaving Charlotte and da-da-da. So out of the 4 agents, I had already picked someone. I said, who do you like? And she picked 2. And Kim, my current agent, was in that group. And so Kim sold it immediately, but that was in 2012. So you can kind of see so that itself was like, you know, there were a lot of times where I actually didn't think I was going to finish the book.
That's amazing. Sadeqa, what about you? What is your whole, like, now we have 3 questions on the table. So you can answer any one of them that you want.
Okay.
About your editing, about your agent relationships, about how many agents you had, like all these questions.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna like try and go bam, bam, bam. All right. So about my editing, I retype the whole manuscript. I know. So I do the first draft. I handwrite as well. So I handwrite as well, and that's how I get all my ideas and my outline and all of that. It's all sort of handwritten, and then I type it in, and then I have like 17 files of like notes for the book. And then I sit down and I write the first draft. So the first draft is really wonky. It's probably like 100 and some odd pages, but it's okay because I really just need to get my points in there, get my characters in there, because I know I'm going to do the whole thing all over. So I print that manuscript, I handwrite in the margin, I open up a new document, and I just retype the whole thing. Wow. And so I do that maybe 2 times. Once my agent gets it, I stop retyping. So I retype up until I give it to my agent. So sometimes it's 2 or 3 times. 2 now. It's been more 2. I'm getting a little faster. So more like twice. Once she gets it and she gives me all of those notes, I don't like to retype it because she does a little bit of a line edit in there and I don't want to mess that up. And so then she and I go back and forth on what we think needs to happen for the manuscript. She really gets me. She was my editor. So I started off self-published. I was a self-published author to begin.
And now you're a National Book Award winner.
And it was because I couldn't get anyone to buy my first book. And I had a background in publishing. So I worked as a publicist. And you mentioned Amy Tan. I was her publicist back in the
You did a great job.
You really did a good job.
Yeah.
I was her publicist back in the 90s.
Amazing.
Wow.
So I had a background. And so when my first agent took my book to market, one by one, everyone told me no. And so my husband and I started a small press. We got that first novel out. We literally hand sold it up and down the East Coast. At every book festival that you could go to, we were there. And that sort of kicked up some steam for me. And my editor for that first novel then decided that she was going to go into agenting. And so she became my agent. So I've been with her since the very beginning. So you were a
publicist, became a writer, and your agent was an editor.
Became an agent. Yes.
And your editor was.
And we were each other's first. Yeah, we were each other's first. So I was her first independent project when I was self-published, and then I was her first agented project when she became an agent. So I mean, no one can take us apart now.
It's just so inspiring, Sadeqa. I mean, honestly, I think everyone out there, people have ideas about self-publishing and they're not sure about it, but here is proof right here that, you can get somewhere.
Yeah. How did you go from that? So did that book that was self-published then get traditionally published, or did you just move on and the next one was traditional?
No. So the first book, no. So it was never traditionally published, but I started writing my second novel, Second House from the Corner. And because my editor knew that was always my goal. Like I didn't necessarily want to self-publish. I did it out of necessity because I needed to keep things rolling. And I did have the experience in having worked in publishing. And so once I started working on Second House from the Corner, she said, I think you could go back to the publishing houses. And she also was trying to find me an agent, Marie. And so she said, maybe you should try this person, or maybe you should try that person. And I had to tell her, nobody loves me the way you love me. You need to be my agent. And then that's how it happened.
Wow. That is so great. Okay, firsts. You were talking about firsts, and I want to get back to Jacquelyn and ask her about being the first Oprah Book Club person ever. Like, was your first reaction like, this is weird, I don't know if I want to do this? Or was it like, oh my God?
No, my reaction, I've never reacted to anything by saying I don't want to do it. I mean, I always want to do it, whatever it is, unless it's like Satanism or something. I mean,
have you been invited to do that as well?
Yeah, no, well, not that often. I mean, but I never do. Okay.
That seems fair.
But there were no book clubs that, and also, it happened this way. I had a little office in my basement. I was, as I said, I was a widow with 3 young kids, and I would go down in my basement to write in Madison, Wisconsin. And at that time, this is like the end of the 90s, right? The answering machine had little tapes in them still.
Yeah.
And they would go on for 4 minutes and then stop. So one morning I go down there and it's beep, hello, this is Oprah Winfrey, and I have loved The Deep End of the Ocean more than I've loved any book in the last 10 years. And I just want to say beep, because I thought it was someone messing around with me. So I go down the basement the next morning and turn on the tape, and this is Oprah Winfrey. And I don't know if you received my message, but I love the deep end of the ocean so much, and I would love to talk more with you. Beep. And I erased that too. And I had an intern from the University of Wisconsin, a kid who worked for me. And I came down the next morning. He said, Jack, I think that really is Oprah Winfrey. Like, listen to how mad she is now. I put the tape on, and she said, this is Oprah Winfrey, and I don't know if you even live here. But if you do live here, could you at least do me the courtesy of returning my phone call? So I did. I was laughing. She wasn't laughing, but I was. And then she said, I want to start the world's largest book club. And I'm going to start it with this book. And my publisher said, that's not going to work out because, those are antithetical media. People who watch TV during the day that are not readers. Bad assumption.
Right.
By the first night that she announced the book club, there were 4,000 holds on it at the New York Public Library.
Wow.
That's how
I love how we used to count books. 4,000 holds on the library, not like 500 pre-ordered copies of
something
whatever.
like that. Right.
It's about like the holds in the library that people actually want to read.
Yeah, 4,000 people waiting for that book just at the New York Public Library.
That's amazing.
And she she's always right. She's always right about everything. She was certainly right about this. And also, Alice Hoffman and I were talking one day, and somebody said,
as you do.
What? As you do.
Yes.
She lives here. She lives,
Awesome.
down the road here. And she said, I would so much, I love the esteem of my peers and I love good reviews, but give me Suburban Housewives any day of the week as a reader, because they are smart, they have good taste, and they can spot a phony a mile off.
They can spot a phony. It's true.
So I have, okay, Milda, if I...
Yeah. I can't shut up, so I'm like so excited.
I have a couple of questions. One is research. And I know, Marie, you did a lot of research. Sadeqa, you did a lot of research too. Do you do a lot of research, Jacquelyn?
I do when I have to, like I do to find out about how you take pictures underwater, because I don't know that, that kind of thing. So I do it when I have to, but I don't write historical novels, and I don't write novels of social import the way that my colleagues here do. So when you're writing realistic contemporary fiction, I plug in the research that I need to do.
But did you go do underwater photography, or did you talk to someone who did it?
I'm really afraid of the ocean.
That's ironic.
I live on Cape Cod. I won't get near that damn dark water. Not me, McGee. I'm afraid of the ocean. I swim in the pool if there's a pool that a friend of mine has or something like that. But I interviewed David Dublier, who is a underwater photographer for National Geographic. Those beautiful pictures you see, he and his wife have taken Jennifer, I can't think of her last name, Bowden, I think. Take those, and I talk to them about how they do that.
Wonderful. How about you, Marie? Sadeqa, you too. How much research is the right amount?
I would prefer if Sadeqa went first on that.
Okay. Well, for Yellow Wife, it was a ton of research, and particularly it was because, one, I had never written historical fiction before. So my first 3 novels are contemporary fiction. It's about things that I knew about: long distance love story, motherhood. My second book, Second House from the Corner, was about a woman who was drowning because she had these 3 kids and she was a stay-at-home mom. I knew what that was like, and so that's what I wrote about. But when I was charged, because I felt like it was a calling to write Yellow Wife, when I was charged to write this story, the first thing I had to do was figure out, well, how the heck do you write historical fiction? Like, how do you write something that took place 100 years or more before you were born? And so it was my curiosity that led me to different plantations in Virginia, just so that I could see the mechanics of it. I needed to smell it, taste it, touch it, get up close, feel the walls, feel the energy of the people who live there. I spent a lot of time in the library, the Library of Virginia, because they had periodicals of the Richmond papers that took place in the 1800s. And so that I could read the articles and get a feel for the way the people spoke and walk and things that happened in society during that time. I would say Yellow Wife took me about 4 to 6 months of just straight research. And within that straight research, it was me sort of building a case. So I had my notebooks like Marie, and, I had it broken into 5 subjects. And so I would break my research up like that, but I was also outlining the story and trying to figure out like what my plot points were at the same time. So that once I sat down to start writing that book, I had a clear beginning, middle, and end, and I had a clear setting and a background and historical context. But then as I was writing, I would bump up against things that I hadn't researched. So in the beginning of the book, it's her first time dressing the missus of the house. I had no idea how many layers she wore, so I had to stop and look up, how do you tie a corset, and what is a, petticoat? And so I had to stop and research, and then I would fold it in. So kind of that big, heavy research for that book in particular up front, and then all the little mini stops because I wasn't prepared for things that I was going to write about and not know about.
That's a really good answer. How about you, Marie?
This leads also into a question that I'm going to want to ask, because I also feel like, look, we've all been doing this for so long, but I do feel like every book is like its own thing. And so you feel like, wait, I should be getting better at this. What's up? Because similarly, my book is about an OBGYN, and I needed to find a way to get into the operating room, because like if they hold the scalpel like this versus like that makes a whole difference.
Like this, I hope not.
But you know what I'm saying? And but it took years for me to get, so I was teaching at Brown at the time. And then, so I managed to like talk my way in like once. But they
did not pass out, which is impressive.
Oh, no. Well, I was going to be a doctor. It's a long story. My father used to bring home medical films. I'm very used to that. But they had the lawyer, like the risk management person there the entire time. So I didn't feel like I got the real thing. So, because I was also in ethics studies at Brown, we have a small like public health thing. So I met someone there, and like through networking, they got me in touch with the new person who was in charge of the OBGYN education. And for a change, he was not a doctor. He was a PhD. He was still a doctor, but he loved fiction. So for a change, he said, "Here, lady," he gave me this whole white coat. And actually, if you see this badge, like I had like a badge that said I was an instructor and stuff. And then, so I was embedded with the 3rd-year students going through their clerkship. But then also what's kind of fun about doing this kind of research too is that because I was listed as an instructor, so I had like a parking pass and everything, I got this very weird invitation going, "Dr. Lee, would you like to monetize your GYN practice? Come to our thing in Las Vegas." I was like, I got on a plane to go to Las Vegas to see what this weird aesthetic vagina surgery done with lasers was. Yeah. So
did they offer you kickbacks if you used it in your office?
No, what it was really is, it was about taking people who are doing primary care and moving them into like for-profit medicine. I mean, despite like all the gross part about it, you know what I'm saying? And it was run by this father-son. And then the crazy thing is I ended up like, I didn't want to lie. So when I got there, I told them I wasn't a doctor. So I got almost like bodily kicked out. But at the same time, their rival guy, who happened to be an Asian American guy, was also kicked out. So it was like in Bugs Bunny. So we both got kicked out. And he's like, "Come to my conference." So I was at the Four Seasons in Tucson, like 3 weeks later, doing this weird research. And then, and then like with Sadeqa, like there's a place that I write about in North Korea where and it was based on a real place where people would kind of give up their weapons, the North and South Koreans, and they would just kind of be themselves again. Because a lot of them were only 18 years old. They would play games and things. And I kind of felt like, how can I write about it if I've never been there? But I did manage to get not only to North Korea, through some very weird fluke, they ended up like taking us to Kaesong, to the place where it was. So sometimes it's almost like you feel like these things are impossible, but then I always felt like, I don't know, there must be some ancestors or someone who wants me to write this book, because by more like relaxing into it instead of, I just knew I had to go to North Korea, but what a dumb goal to like have to finish the book. But I knew I probably couldn't write it unless I really was there and feeling it. So.
I think that's so impressive.
Yeah. I get that. I definitely get that. How about you, Jacquelyn? Oh wait, you actually already answered this. So I have a question, another question. When you are writing multiple books, and especially you, Jacquelyn, I guess, how do you get the voices so different? Like, how do you do that?
I imagine the people. You mean the voice of the novel, like the narrative voice, or do you mean the character voices? Is
characters that... and yes. So you have a strong sense of character first, right?
I have a strong sense of plot first. Oh. And then I decide whether it's a first person novel or a third person novel. What the necessity is for the intensity of being in close with first person, or a little bit more narrative distance with third person, and then decide what to me character comes from plot rather than the other way around. To me, the plot is the reigning queen, and the characters really come to life. If they ever do come to life, they're not real to me, but they're realistic. They come to life by putting them in action, by putting them in trouble, basically. Putting them in trouble is the way to get the truest measure of who they are. And having written so many novels, the biggest challenge for me right now sometimes is to make sure that everybody has a name that I've never used before. So I spend a lot of time in cemeteries.
Oh, wow.
Looking at people's names, because I can't have everyone be named Bob and Bill and Bruce, and Kathy. I have to. So, and fortunately, sort of fortunately, on Cape Cod, there are a lot more dead people than live people. There've been people here since 1600. There are a lot of cemeteries with a lot of people in them, and they had a lot of different names.
That's so funny.
Do you guys work that way? Sadeqa, do you work that way?
Do you hang out in cemeteries to get your...
I did not hang out in the cemeteries, but what I did was, because the book takes place during slavery, I was really wanting to honor as many of the ancestors as possible. So all of the names in the book came off of slave ledgers. And I would just sort of imagine what that person's life was. So a mixture of slave ledgers that I found in my research, as well as a few names off of my family tree.
Oh, nice. Where'd you get your names, Marie?
The weird thing is, I just kind of let them come. And the weird thing about the name Youngman is, a friend of mine who is much better with Korean, because a lot of Korean names are based on Chinese characters, so they could mean different things. He was having a slight argument over whether it could really mean evening hero, and we're having this argument about it. But then he in some other research he had to do, he found these oracle bones for the character for Young. And it was like of a woman with like an X in her middle. And he's like, you could read that oracle bone as OBGYN. So he's like, I'm going to let you have that. So I was kind of happy, because Youngman is not a very common Korean name either. And you know how like you don't know if you're just self-suggesting or you've heard it before. I'm always worried about like plagiarizing something. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I took this name because
in your life, like it was subconsciously in your life somewhere.
It's like there's some other really good Korean American book or something. But so in this case, I was just really, and then I was kind of like, but the wife's name is also Yoongae, and that's all weird. But I just kept it because those two names just came to me independently, even though it breaks all the rules. It's too confusing. It was Youngman and Yoongae. Well, I was like, I don't know what to do.
But see, isn't that great? Like 3 different people have 3 totally different ways of getting names. And that's just one aspect of their writing. And they're all fantastic. Okay, now I have a question. All of you have had major professional wins in your life. So So what I'm interested in is, it sounds like you guys all have like these magical lives where everything is perfect and nothing ever goes wrong. So I want to know a time in which you were feeling like your writing career was in crisis. How did you get through it? Like, how did you get to where you are now, which is like superstars that we are venerating? How did you get through some moment? It can be small, but like, was there ever a time where you were like, I don't know, I can't do this anymore, I gotta quit? And how did you get to where you are now?
I won't touch this with a barge pole because I feel that way every day.
Are you kidding me?
Every day.
Okay, look at our faces where when you say
every
22
day
novels.
I get up and think, really, really, what you're good at is making spaghetti sauce. You should monetize that, because you're not I'm not creative. I'm not a natural writer. Every word is difficult for me. Every sentence is difficult for me. It doesn't, I don't take dictation from the universe. I'm none of that. It's very difficult. And I always feel as though I'm going to be found out.
Well, perhaps after your 80th novel, somebody will say, I don't know why she's still writing.
Right. You know what I think about that is that I think that's what keeps us humble. And that's what keeps us hungry. And that's what keeps us showing up every day for the page. Because compliments don't really work so well for me, right? Like when, oh my gosh, this was so good. I'm like, was that really that good? Could I have made that better? Could I have sat with it a little bit longer? That sort of thing. And so, a lot of times I feel like when people are giving me like compliments, I don't necessarily see what they see. And I think it's a good thing. I was telling my agent this the other day. I said, because I think not being able to see that keeps me humble and hungry and makes me want to show up every day and do the absolute best I can. And even if it is crap, right? Like even if it feels crappy and I still think it could be better, I showed up. And if I keep showing up every day, it's going to get a little bit better and a little bit better. And then it's going to become something that I could live with, something that I could go, whew, I can't do anything else with that. Either you like it or you don't.
Exactly.
And I think that's the way it is for me with writing.
No, I think that's such a good question to just kind of open it up to. No, there is no magic point where you're like, I'm a writer, I'm all set. Because as Christina knows, like, so I have like these 3 novels. I don't know if you remember this, Christina, but like I quit my job trying to get my book published. The person who's going to become my mother-in-law, we're like vacationing together, goes, what are you going to do if this doesn't work out? What will you do? And I was like, as if I need someone to be, I'm already like roiling like this, you know what I mean? I
do remember that
job.
I do
remember my language. Okay, so you remember, I'm like, I just was like, I don't know. It was just like, it'll have to work out somehow.
Yeah.
But then my first adult novel, Back to Oprah, weirdly enough, when it was on the market, somebody stole a copy of it and it became Oprah's first magazine memoir. And it turned out it was like a fake book, but after they withdrew it, that had already ruined my novel. So it came out with a much smaller press. I had a 2-book deal with one of these really big publishers, which I will not name at this point. They withdrew that. I was a completely FUCK. And I was just like, what happened to my life? And, and I just had my son and I was kind of like, great, here I am like toiling away on this domestic stuff. My life is ruined. And then what happened later is like 10 years later, this editor from a really small press is like, what happened to Marie's book? I thought it was going to come out with blah, blah, blah. My agent's like, shut up. And then she's like, so she bought it for like 2 cents. Do you know what I'm saying? So, and actually my agent didn't even want to sell it. She was so insulted. So, and then this book, it got, it got sold, but you know what? I told them not to tell me what was happening. Only one press took it. So it was one press away from not getting published. You see, I'm saying like everyone sees it, like you're published, you're this. I'm like, no, every single time it's been either my life was ruined or something happened, or, like Jeff Vandermeer, like his first press went out of business. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Everybody has, and I also have 2 unpublished novels in my drawers. And I feel like I can't be friends with anyone who doesn't have at least one unpublished novel that's completely failed. So.
Well, I have one. I didn't have one until last year. And then I wrote a novel that I couldn't get arrested. with this novel. But I want
We can
to
be friends
talk
now. Okay.
and I still can't get it published. So it will always be in my drawer. But my great friend, who self-published her first novel, she couldn't get it published by a million publishers. Okay, so finally her ex-husband designed the cover. She published it herself. It was considered too depressing because it was about a woman who was a professor who's got early onset Alzheimer's. They call this novel Still Alice now. And my friend Lisa Genova, who lives down the street here, self-published that novel, and then the big publisher Simon & Schuster came along and bought it for $600,000 after it was
I had
self-published.
no idea.
Wow.
It's about a Columbia professor. There's like so many novels about Columbia professors getting Alzheimer's. It's becoming a thing.
Yes,
The church was
right.
the first.
Just a plethora of them.
Right.
And by the way, speaking of no one is, but speaking of women writers supporting each other, right?
Mhm.
I'm a Tall Poppy writer. Also, my best friend is the founder of the Tall Poppies, Ann Garvin, who believes that women writers don't necessarily receive enough support from the world at large. So we have to be good and kind and loving to each other and support each other's work, which is a noble goal.
That's awesome.
Neat.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys, we are over time, but I could talk to you all night. This is the most amazing thing. I'm going to ask the audience if they have any last questions, because this is your chance, audience, because otherwise we have to go. But if you have a burning question that you've been saving, this is the time to drop it in the chat. And I will otherwise just be so grateful to Jacquelyn and Marie and Sadeqa. Amazing panel, amazing event. Christina, good job. It was, to find these three women and for all of you to be free together and to be able to do this as our season closer for May, this is amazing. Everybody who is out there in video land, if you're watching this on a replay or if you're watching it now, make sure that you are on our mailing list so that you do not miss a single one of these things. They happen once a month on the second Tuesday of each month.
And please, our authors, please purchase their books. The links are in the chat.
Yes, buy their books. The links are in the chat. Pre-order Marie's book, buy Sadeqa's and Jacquelyn's, and become things. Jacquelyn, if we had to read if nobody has read any of her books, which one do they start with?
The Deep End of the Ocean.
The Deep End, and then you just read
a little
the next
book
22.
that
And then you just read the next 21 of them in a row.
Stop that now.
And everybody else has enough.
I wouldn't want anyone to read in a phone booth, in a dark night. No, there are books that I want to forget I ever wrote.
It's important to send your business
power, Jackie. I'll bet you anything you have like 10, 15 pages written by hand. Right on the side.
I never write. I am fascinated by and in awe of people who write by hand, because I can't sign a greeting card without making a mistake. I can't write with my hand anymore. Just only the keyboard works.
Well, my handwriting is terrible because I write faster than I think faster than I could write. So it all sped up. And so my kids, I don't have to worry about anybody stealing my journals or my diaries and knowing my deep, dark secrets in my house because no one can read my handwriting. I could barely read my handwriting, but somehow I get it done.
Do you ever include your kids in your work? I know, Marie, you've written about Jay before, but how about you, Sadeqa and
I think about them. So they definitely inspire scenes or inspire a character or something like that. And when I was writing Second House from the Corner, I wrote about a woman who had 3 children, a boy and 2 girls, and I had 3 children, a boy and 2 girls, and they were around the same age. And it was really because I needed to get some stuff off my chest.
Nice.
So I have to, I don't want to end, but I have to end. So thanks to the DeGroat Foundation for sponsoring this thing. Thanks, of course, to Poets and Writers and to NISCA for funding us. And you guys, thank you so much for showing up and for listening and asking good questions and being interesting and all the things and writing great books. Everybody, Parentis.org is what you can find us on, and we'll be here, forever. So, just keep making it happen.
Thank you for showing. We love
Yeah.
you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.